Well, good day all, and welcome to your third web clinic. And today's session is called the Sales Performance Coaching Process. So this is really the process for really effectively coaching salespeople to success. So this is where we get in and figure out how do we drive sales using the coaching process. All right, so with that in mind, let's just dive in and see what exactly we're going to be covering. So today we're going to be looking at, first of all, where you've been. So let's do a review and let's see where you're at, and I guess marry that up against maybe where you should be at. And then we're going to dive in and look at the process of effective sales performance coaching. And if we have time, we'll dive in and look at Q&A. It seems of late there hasn't really been much time for Q&A. It seems I've way overstayed my welcome. So let's see, hopefully I'll be able to do it better today. So far, this is where I guess you should be at, and I'm just really going to run through this quickly. And please, folks, if you're not at this point, don't stress about it. This is just to give you an indication as really to where you ideally should be at. So kind of set up your target to follow this path. Okay, so by now you would have had your expectations discussion with your team and hopefully even your boss. And I know that many of you are already engaged in your expectations discussion, so that's great. Many of you have started, or some of you even completed, your sales skills audit. So again, go into Sales Coach Academy, watch the video, and complete that skills audit with your salespeople. This is really critical, and you'll see more today why it is so relevant. I'm guessing that some of you would have at least scheduled a time in to run the Playing Above the Line session with your team. All you need to do, really folks, it's this easy. Select a day when you'll have your team together. Run the process just like it is in the Sales Coach Academy. There's the 7-step process. Just run the process. There really isn't that much work to do. You're going to show a video and then you're going to discuss the video. There are 7 steps of what you've got to do. It's not a big deal. If you pen the time in the diary now, it'll just happen. And then of course there's your audio library listening. So hopefully you guys are getting a lot of value from listening to the experts that I've interviewed and are learning a lot and obviously translating that into your daily work practice. And then by now you definitely would have begun the process of implementing a consistent and ongoing coaching practice. So you've got dates set in your diary and people are showing up, and you started the one-on-one coaching practice. We've covered the first webinar, which was your first coaching session, the setting expectations. So you hopefully have all gone through that. If you weren't able to attend, you've at least gone through it on the Sales Coach Academy. And then there was the second webinar, which we had a fortnight ago, and that was on the 3 key skills of effective sales coaching. So this is where we actually spoke about the actual skills required to be an effective coach. And then we've also run 2 group conference coaching calls. If you feel like you are slipping behind, if you feel like you are too far behind, then folks, please speak to your coach. You don't want to fall behind because there's just too much catch up. So at your next coaching session, just have a chat and figure out what you can do, what must be done, what is nice to have done, and just get yourself back on the road. So before we dive in and tackle today's web clinic, I want to just remind us all as to really why we're here. Why are we doing this? Well, we know that sales performance coaching is a proven world's best practice sales management solution. Folks, this is not a silver bullet. There is no silver bullet, but if there was, sales performance coaching would be the next best thing. It's been proven that sales coaching is the single proven highest leverage sales management strategy that delivers increased sales at higher margin, it improves competitive advantage, it speeds up pipelines, it retains a motivated team of salespeople. And it's one of those few and practical sales improvement strategies that a sales manager can control, because you don't need a budget for it. You don't have to be restricted by the company culture. In fact, sales performance coaching almost creates its own culture. You're not limited by company systems or procedures. You're not restricted by internal politics and demands. Coaching isn't even impacted by your boss or your customers' demands. And I guess the best part is that really it doesn't matter about your salespeople's attitude or their aptitude. Coaching still has a huge impact. And the beauty is that distance is not even an issue today with technology. So that's just a reminder as to why we're doing this program. You, as a sales manager, are on this program to understand and to learn world's best practice sales performance coaching. This will help you to drive sales like no other tool or strategy available to you today. This is not a nice to do. This is a must do. It's an imperative for your sales management career that you really get sales performance coaching locked down and happening. And it's a discipline just like anything else. So you're ready to go? Take good notes today. Turn off all your phones, emails, other distractions. Just get focused. Get ready to learn. So let's dive in and really let's milk everything we can out of today's session. And the key, folks, is really to take the information and go out and apply it. We give you the exercises at the end. Take them and implement them and use them. And once again, folks, if you're having any implementation issues, then raise them with your coach. Now, folks, the first thing you need to understand when it comes to the sales performance coaching process is really the formula that drives everything you do as a sales performance coach. And in fact, it's not only the formula that drives what you do as a coach, but it's the formula for driving sales. So what is that formula? Well, we call that formula the profitable sales revenue formula. And it basically goes like this. It says that R at M equals P multiplied by Q multiplied by M. So R at M is revenue at margin, and P is productivity multiplied by Q, which is quality, multiplied by M, which is motivation. So if you want to increase your revenue, if you want to increase your margins, then you've got to increase one or two or all three of those multipliers. So what are the multipliers? First one is productivity. Let's take a look at when we say productivity, what do we mean, and what are the things that you as a coach need to be able to latch onto and work with the team member to improve. Because think about it this way. If you improved your productivity by just 10%, now you've got to be able to get more than 10% productivity. And in fact, in our next web clinic, we're actually going to be talking about how do we drive salespeople productivity. But if you can just drive up your salespeople's productivity by just 10%, and then you improve the quality of that productivity, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, and let's say you improve that by 10%, and then added to that, you increase their motivation by 10%. Think of the impact that increased productivity, increased quality, and increased motivation would have on your revenue at margin. So with that in mind, let's take a look at what we mean by productivity. Well, productivity is really all the actions, all the events, all the activities that the salesperson needs to engage in to drive sales. So things like lead generation, research, sales planning, phone calls, follow-up phone calls, sales calls, qualification, presentations and demonstrations, negotiation, wrap-ups, and of course service calls. So these are all activities. Now, depending on how you measure your current sales pipeline and what sort of gates you have within your pipeline, you might have different activities that your salespeople have to perform in order to drive sales. The object of the game is to understand what are those activities and then use coaching to drive up production of those activities. So, as an example, let's say one of the issues you're working on is the development of new business. Well, obviously then you need to ramp up the amount of lead generation that your salespeople are involved in. How much research are they doing? And what about their calls and their call planning? So all of those things impact whether they're bringing in new business or not. So what are the activities that lead to the development of new business? This is the area that you drive through your coaching sessions when we talk productivity. Now, here's the interesting thing, is that if we just went out and we just were productive, we would make sales. We all know this. The more people you see, the more calls you make, the more sales you're just going to stumble across. And really this is the first lesson we're all taught in sales. Sales is a numbers game. Just do the numbers. What are we talking about here? They're talking about productivity. However, if we take those same activities and now we add the component of quality, now all of a sudden we are working smarter rather than harder. Now all of a sudden we are really leveraging our activity efforts. So here we're talking about the capability impact. So this is the impact of our capabilities on our activities. It's the quality of what we do. So when we're making a phone call, it's not just a phone call, it's our ability to really tune in and listen, our ability to build rapport, our ability to leave a message that is compelling in such a way that drives the prospect to call us back. This is what we mean by adding quality to the activity. And this is the capability impact, the impact that our capabilities have on our activity. And really here what we're talking about is we're talking about our skills, which is really a function of our knowledge, our behaviors, and our natural talents or our aptitudes. And so as a coach, we need to know what our people know. We need to understand the behaviors that they're currently using that are contributing both positively and negatively to their sales activities moving the sale forward. We need to understand what talents they have and how we use those talents and how we mine those talents to drive the sale forward. This is the quality aspect, and this is where we use coaching. So when we unpack an individual's week example by example, here is where we hear the quality of what it is they do. And by the way, for those of you who want to know what aptitude actually is, it's our inherent capacity. It's a talent or our ability to do something. So this is typically what we are endowed with. These are our natural talents. And really, some people have more natural talent at selling than others. And so it's our ability to milk those natural talents that helps us to improve the impact on the sales activities that the individual is engaged in. And then, of course, there's motivation. Folks, I wish I had $1 for every sales manager that has said to me, what do I do to motivate my people? I just need to motivate my team members. Well, let's understand what motivation is. Firstly, motivation is defined as the process. So this is something we can do. There's a process, there's a recipe here that initiates, guides, and maintains goal-orientated behaviors. So look at this from a coach's point of view. First of all, it's a process. Second of all, it's something that is initiated. Who initiates it? Sometimes that initiation stems from the coachee, but often it's by us. It's what we have stimulated in them, what we've prompted in them, that initiates a goal. And it's our job then to guide and maintain through ongoing coaching goal-oriented behaviors. So we have a huge impact on motivation. We have an impact on motivation from a leadership perspective. People have amazing capacity to do incredible things when engaged by a strong leader. We know that leadership has a huge impact on motivation. We know that coaching, like I've just described, impacts motivation. Training and development. When you train somebody, that adds motivation. Ongoing training, ongoing development. When you can provide them with development opportunities, so even if there isn't a natural career path for them within your organization, there is still a career path out there for them. You provide them with the tools, with the learning, so that they can work their way up the ladder. Now, whether it's with you or whether you're building their abilities so they can move on at a later stage, people are inspired to keep growing. Yes, you might lose them, but on the other hand, you might as well have a highly motivated individual in the meantime. Because at the end of the day, people are motivated, people are driven to the next rung on the ladder. Recognition and rewards. Well, we know this, folks. We know that a lot of people, especially many salespeople, will do incredible things for the recognition, to stand on the stage once a year, get that plaque for Salesman of the Year. They will push themselves. They will work like Trojans just to get up on stage. And rewards. How do we reward our people? Are our rewards complicated? Because we really need to have a simple incentive plan. Folks, if your incentive plan is too complicated, then it's more of a demotivator than it is a motivator. I mean, think about it this way. As a salesperson, just let's put on the salesperson's shoes. When a salesperson makes a sale, what is one of the first things they do? They pull out their calculator and calculate how much commission they've just made. Folks, if you've got a complicated incentive plan, it's not driving motivation, it's hindering motivation. You also need to understand the individual's motivational footprint. Now, in the book Bulletproof Your Sales Team on page 263, there's a whole section there on how to determine the individual motivational footprint of your salespeople. And then finally, there's what all great managers inherently know as a way to motivate people. Discover their strengths and build on their strengths. It's a lot easier to grow somebody with their strengths than it is to really change weaknesses. So, I'll give you an example. Years ago, I read a book called And Now Discover Your Strengths. And if you haven't read it, it's really a super book. And there's actually a profiling tool at the end of the book that you can take, which will highlight your 5, what they call signature strengths. And really, for $25, I think the book is, you can pretty much profile each one of your salespeople and get an idea of what their core strengths are. So I just finished this book, and I was working on a consulting project up in the Newcastle area, and was working with a team, and here's what we found. Newcastle as a territory had been subdivided into 3 different territories. One territory was what they called key accounts, so these were all the key accounts within the territory were managed by a key account manager. The other 2 territories, these were just sales reps, and their role, like any territory manager's job, was to grow that territory, look after the accounts within that territory, and obviously bring in new blood within that territory. So in this particular instance, there were 2 sales reps managing those territories. Now, it turns out that one of the fellows was really outstanding at building relationships. He loved to get into account. He loved to work that account. He loved to build relationships within the account. And in fact, he was actually earmarked for the key account manager's role when the individual who was currently managing the key accounts either left or retired. But in the meantime, he was out there running the territory. Now, the problem with this fella was that he abhorred cold calling. Turns out later when we did his strengths analysis, one of the key signature strengths that he had was what we call harmony. Well, without knowing anything about the strength of harmony, one can only imagine someone who loves peace and harmony now having to go in and face rejection that comes with knocking down new doors. So this just went against his grain. That being said, he had a tremendous track record of growing individual sales accounts. In the other territory, we had the exact opposite. We had a bloke whose passion was getting out and breaking down barriers and opening up new accounts. This for him was a challenge. This is what he thrived on. And all he wanted to do was get in and mix it and move on. So the problem was he wasn't growing his accounts because he wasn't really looking after them, because he just kept on moving on, open up the account and would move on to a new one. Now, all we did here was we simply intertwined each of the roles. We leveraged off each of their strengths. So we had the one fella go out and open up new accounts, and once they were open, he did a handover to the gentleman who really enjoyed building the relationship and building that account. So the way it ended up, we restructured the territories in such a way that we leveraged the natural talents and gifts of each of these individuals. That's what we mean by focusing on strengths. So think about it this way then. When you coach your people in terms of their motivation, when you coach your people in terms of the quality of their interactions, the quality of their activities, when you coach your people on improving and accelerating and increasing their productivity, their activities, that's where you get a multiplication effect on your revenue at margin. All right, so let's talk about the sales performance coaching process. How does that actually work? And I guess in a sense, why is it different from other coaching processes? You know, often I'm asked what I should be coaching. What are the things that I can actually coach my salespeople on? Because after a while, surely it gets a little bit boring. Well, here's the interesting thing. The fact of the matter is that the areas that we coach on are really those 3 key areas. The areas of activity, the areas of quality, and the areas of motivation. So when we talk sales performance coaching, we're actually now getting into the process of how do we actually coach on productivity, how do we coach on motivation, how do we coach on quality. And the way we do that is through the coaching process. And so we're now going to take a look at the sales performance coaching process. So we're going to use a model for this. Before I get to that though, what you'll need to do is you need to get into the Sales Coach Academy. So scroll down to the 6th tab, which is Sales Performance Coaching Videos. So you'll see it there, that's Sales Performance Coaching Videos. And then if you scroll all the way down, you'll come to the templates. Now there's a word template there which says pre-coaching session email template. So you pull that up and it says cut and paste from the Word doc below an email to the individual being coached 2 to 3 days prior to your session with them. Now this template has been designed really to take all the thinking and all the hard work out of your day. So all you do is you click the template, open it up, and you'll be presented with a Word doc. It basically reads like this. It's your pre-coaching email template which says, "Hi Sam, please complete the following questions prior to our next one-on-one session on Friday the 8th at 7:30 a.m. And obviously you change those dates. I would appreciate it if you would email your answers back to me by midday on the 6th, as that will give me time to prepare to maximize our time together. Question number 1. These are my wins since our last time together. Question number 2. This is what I did not get done, but I had intended to do. Question number 3. These are the challenges, the barriers that I'm facing right now. And question number 4. A perfect outcome for our time together would be. Number 5. These are the opportunities that are available to me right now. And the final question, number 6, I need help with. And your salutation, which is thank you, regards, John, Mary, Phil, or what have you. So this is the template email that you send out to your people prior to a coaching session. Now keep in mind, these questions can be changed to suit you and whatever circumstances you happen to be in. This is just a template. This is just to give you a platform to start your program with. Now once you've sent your email out, the next thing to do is obviously set aside some preparation time, 20 or 30 minutes prior to the session, to go through and prepare for the coaching session, and we'll discuss that in just a while. So the first thing we want to do when it comes to any coaching session is really you want to set the goals and objectives for that session. This is really the platform on which your session is going to be based. Let's just understand here for a minute. There are 2 types of coaching sessions that you're going to be running. One will be a session based on their agenda, and again, you've sent out the email. This is to gather their information, the content they would like to talk about. On the other hand, when it comes to sales performance coaching, there are times that in fact we get into the driver's seat and we drive the agenda of sales. So when we start a coaching session, we start out, as I said, by setting the goals and objectives. And the question you want to be asking them is, so John, what would be a great outcome for today's session? So assuming we had a terrific coaching session today, what outcomes would we have accomplished? And then you want to turn those outcomes into SMART goals. And we've covered SMART goals. And again, if you haven't gone through the section in the Sales Coach Academy on sales coaching, then make time, set time aside to go through module number 5, Sales Performance Coaching. In that session, we actually cover off how to go about setting SMART goals. But for right now, let's assume we understand what SMART goals are. So you're now going to take the goals that they've set and you're going to smarten them up. You're going to make sure the goals are specific, they're measurable, they are achievable, and they are rewarding. You're also going to make sure that the goals are time bound, so we know exactly what we want to achieve today. Now, this means that you really need to get clear, and your coachee really needs to get clear on what finished looks like. So assuming we've accomplished that goal, what does it look like? And whatever that looks like, we now want to make sure that it's a SMART goal, a SMART objective. In my role as a sales strategist, I often meet with very senior sales leadership, and it amazes me that even at such high levels, those leaders still don't know how to set SMART goals. So let me give an example of some of the things I'm talking about when it comes to setting SMART goals, because these are some of the things that your salespeople will tell you. So as an example, I want to achieve my sales targets if we looked at that and we wanted to smarten that up, would really turn into, my objective is to exceed my sales targets in February by 10%. See, that's a smart objective. It's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's rewarding, and of course it's time bound. Let's take a look at the next one. I want to learn about the new XYZ system. If we smarten that up, it becomes, my objective is to be able to answer any question on the XYZ system confidently by the 20th of April. See, that's a smart objective. And then as one last example, I want to improve my time management. See how nebulous that is? There's just nothing we can grab onto there. So we smarten that goal up and we say, my objective is to plan my diary to efficiently manage my territory every Friday afternoon at 4:30 p.m. So with that in mind now, let's take a look at the sales performance coaching process. So this is a process that we follow when we just focused on coaching them for sales success. So where we start is, we start with what we call the weekly debrief. So what's the weekly debrief? Effectively, this is where we want to unpack the week or the fortnight that has just gone by. Now, here's what we know. We know that the most successful sales managers will help the salesperson to unpack their activities from a productivity point of view, from a quality point of view, and from a motivational point of view since the last time they got together. And in order to do that, they want to do a weekly debrief. So this is really unpacking what has happened over the last week or the last fortnight, depending on how often you catch up with your individual salespeople. Now, interestingly enough, when I actually wrote the book Bulletproof Your Sales Team, all the research pointed to managers doing the weekly debrief first. And having taught this technique to so many sales managers, we've now come to realize actually that there is great merit, in fact, in actually strategizing the week ahead first. In other words, John, let's take a look at what you've got planned for next week, or let's take a look at what you've got planned for the next fortnight. You see, you can strategize the week with them, and you can help them to plan it, to really get into the nitty-gritty, into the detail of what's going to happen, and you can do that first. And then you would do your in-depth weekly debrief second. So the first thing you'd do is you'd help them to strategize the week or the 2 weeks coming up, and then you would actually complete an in-depth weekly debrief of the 2 weeks or the week that's just gone by. And so you can complete either the in-depth weekly debrief first, or if you'd like, you can strategize the week ahead. Whatever is your preference, whatever you have a preference for, whichever you like, that's entirely up to you. Either way, though, you will need to have an in-depth weekly debrief, and you will need to help them to strategize the week or the fortnight ahead. And so if you want to get a really good idea of what that looks like, what a strategy session looks like, or what a in-depth weekly debrief looks like or sounds like, then go into the Sales Coach Academy and watch the videos in Sales Performance Coaching. And there's not only a detailed explanation, but there's also a demonstration of what that should look like. All that being said, you've now unpacked the 2 weeks that have just been. You've strategized the next 2 weeks coming up, and you now need to resolve any roadblocks that will get in the way of the individual achieving their goals for the next couple of weeks. And so we use 2 roadblock breaking strategies, and the first roadblock breaker is what we covered in those sales performance coaching videos, and that's the issue, cause, solution, action technique. So issue, what specifically is the issue? Let's really understand what it is clearly. Once we understand what the issue is, let's unpack and let's understand what are the causes behind that issue, and we brainstorm a list of causes. And then what you want to do is you want to brainstorm a list of potential solutions, and from that list you want to then select the one solution you believe is probably the most practical or the easiest or the best, and then you want to develop all the actions that are required in order to implement that as a solution. And so that's the ICSA technique. The next technique I want to share with you is really what we call the simple roadblock removal system. Now this system has really evolved from a training that I did with one of the world's greatest internet marketers, a fellow by the name of Rich Chevron. And I've taken his really simple technique and I've applied that technique to the sales performance coaching model as a roadblock removal system. So let's take a look at it. Firstly, what you want to do is you want to list all the roadblocks. So what are all the roadblocks that are standing in the way? Now keep in mind this is an alternative roadblock breaking technique. So list all the roadblocks. All right. Now once you've listed all the roadblocks, the next thing you want to do is you want to convert those roadblocks into a SMART goal. Now this is where you've got to get clever. So let's, as an example, let's say the roadblock is I don't have enough leads. And as I recall, we even touched on this example in the previous web clinic. Boss, I don't have enough leads. Then becomes I need 30 leads every single month. The next one is I don't have enough time to study my product knowledge. Becomes I study product knowledge 1 hour a week. And that's pretty much how it works. So we take the objection, if you like, we take the roadblock and we convert the roadblock into a SMART goal. And then all we have to do is, once it's a goal, we just have to come up with strategies, tactics to solve the goal. We do this anyway. The difference is what we've done here is we've taken a roadblock, we've converted the roadblock into a SMART goal, and now what we're doing is we're brainstorming solutions to achieve that goal. And then finally, once, folks, we've removed the roadblocks and we have an action plan to get those roadblocks out the way, then what we want to do is we want to confirm execution. In other words, this is where the rubber meets the road. Folks, most ideas, most training programs, most agendas, if you like, never get accomplished simply because we don't turn the goal into a project. We don't turn the goal into execution. And in fact, there's a terrific book written by Larry Bossidy and Ram Charan called Execution. And this was written back in 2002. And it's really the story of why companies don't get things done. And pretty much the whole book can be summarized as a manager's ability to take a goal and convert it into a who is going to be doing what, by when, and what resources do they need in order to make it happen. And this is really what you want to do when you're confirming execution. You want to determine who is going to be doing what, by when, and what resources are required to get that job done. And that's confirming execution. Now, the good news is once you've done that, now you've got something tractionable that you can hold somebody accountable for. Folks, how you record that is up to you. There is a template in Sales Coach Academy called the Sales Performance Coaching Log, and as you'll see, you've got the date, the issue, the action required, by when, by who, if there are any resources required, and you get them to initial it. The moment they actually put their signature next to an action, all of a sudden your conversion rate in terms of increased activity, increased desire, increased willingness to do what they said they're going to do and fulfill their promise increases exponentially. So use the Sales Performance Coaching Log or create your own, up to you. Interestingly enough, we have a lot of managers that actually get their salespeople to actually fill out the sales performance coaching log themselves and then just email it back to them. So in other words, they get their salesperson to take all the notes, to write down all the actions under some guidance, and then forward that back to them at the end of the session. And once again, that's entirely up to you. Many coaches I know take notes, and once they have determined who's going to be doing what by when, they then send an email to the salesperson confirming the meeting, confirming what was discussed, and confirming the actionable items. And folks, that is pretty much the system. So we know that once we start with setting clear goals and objectives, we move into strategizing the week ahead, or an in-depth weekly debrief. We unpack the roadblocks. We confirm execution. That's the sales performance process. And we use this process with the glasses, with the understanding that we are focused on productivity. In other words, actions. What are the things that need to happen? What are the sales activities that need to take place? Quality. What are the quality aspects of those activities that we can improve on? So as an example, when they say to you, well, I couldn't get past the gatekeeper. All right, tell me what you said. How did you go about it? Let's do a role play. Let's figure out a different script. Let's figure out a different message we can use to get traction. This is where coaching now focuses on the qualitative aspects of the activity. And then, of course, the third and final key element is motivation, is understanding where they're coming from and their motive for doing what it is they've said they're going to do. All right, so finally, here's the process that I'm going to get you to engage in. The first thing that I want you to do is I want you to sit down and determine what are the low-hanging fruit areas with particular individuals where applying the profitable sales revenue formula will have the biggest impact. In other words, if you look at the individual, does that individual need to invest more time in activities that generate sales? Or should we invest more time in the qualitative areas of the activities? Do they need more motivation? Where are we going to get the biggest bang for our efforts? Now, mind you, I might tell you that just statistically, the quickest and most effective way of moving this thing forward is to focus on activity. We know statistically that in most cases, salespeople are working at about 60% of their capacity. So I would start with the productivity aspect, also because it's a lot easier to measure as well. This is the area that we can manage because it's measurable. We can measure how many calls they make. We can measure how many service calls they made, etc. So focus on the productivity aspects first. And by the way, a good clue is get them to tell you what they think the areas are in terms of whether it be their activity, whether it be their quality, or whether it be their motivation. And by the way, in most cases, they will say things like, if I knew more, if I had more product knowledge, which we know if they had more product knowledge, they'd spend more time talking to the client anyway. So we don't want them to talk, we want them to ask. So that's not really an answer. But get them to tell you so that they can be involved in coming up with the answer. Then set a SMART goal that pertains to whether it be the motivation, the quality, or whether it be the productivity aspect. Work with them to set a SMART goal. Then you review and you unpack their previous performance over the past week, fortnight in that area. So let's say the area we're working in is new business development calls. Okay, how many new business development calls did you make in the last 2 weeks? Not enough? Great. Let's set a goal to increase that by 10, 15, 20, 30, 50%, whatever the goal is. And let's review what they did. And once we've reviewed what they did, then let's help them to identify the performance gaps. So if they've only done half a dozen new business calls, and in order for them to hit their goals, their KPIs, their sales numbers, they need to do twice that, then let's show that up as a gap. And then help them to strategize their week around that key profitable sales revenue formula area. So again, if the area is developing new business, then we need to help them to strategize how they're going to increase the amount of new business calls that they need to make. And obviously there's going to be roadblocks. So you're going to have to help them to remove those roadblocks and then confirm execution. So who is going to be doing what, by when. And maybe in this case, you might want to offer and look at how are we going to do that. So if the roadblock is, let's say they struggle with core reluctance, then what are some of the tools, what are some of the things that they can implement to overcome their reluctance so that they can achieve their goal of increasing the amount of new business calls they make. All right, so what now? What are your next steps? Well, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to go out and block out coaching planning time in your diary. So if you already have coaching time set aside with your people, then take a half an hour on the front end of that coaching session so that you can do some planning for that session. Next, obviously you want to send out a pre-coaching email, so use the template provided. And then I want you to review that salesperson or your salespeople's activity, quality, and motivation quotient. So the easiest way to do it, obviously, as far as activity goes, you already have some form of activity measures, I'm assuming. If you don't, set them up. If you have nothing and it's too hard to set up, either talk to me or talk to your coach and let's see if we can get you some. At the very least, just measure their productivity on a scale of 1 to 5. 5 being is, in your opinion, they're out there, they're doing what they're supposed to do. 1 being they haven't got a clue and they're a lazy bum and they spend most of the time in the office. So when all else fails, just use the rating. And so by now you should have completed your skills audit, and this should tell you which areas of quality we need to work on. And again, this is just a simple rating on a scale of 1 to 5 where they are dropping the ball, where you perceive them dropping the ball in terms of their quality of the sales activity that they're implementing. And then finally, their motivation quotient on a scale of 1 to 5. How motivated are they? Now again, feel free to dive into Bulletproof Your Sales Team. You've got a copy there, and sit down with the people and work out their motivational footprint. But if that's too much like hard work for you, just give them a rating in your mind. Keep in mind though, you probably also want to get a rating from them, how they would rate their motivation. And the question might go something like this. So John, on a scale of 1 to 5, if you were to consider your own personal motivation to doing this piece of work, to doing this job, to your role, 5 being you can't wait to get up in the morning. In fact, you're so excited that you find it difficult to even sleep. And a 1 being that when that alarm bell goes off in the morning, you just want to pull the covers over your head and call in sick. And in fact, you never ever want to go and do this job ever again. Where would you rank yourself? And let them give themselves a ranking. And this will give you an idea as to really where they see themselves. Now, once you have a number, then you can question around that number. Okay, a 3? Great. Why a 3? Why not a 4? What would we need to do to get it up to a 4? Etc. And then you need to determine where they will get the fastest bang for their efforts. Folks, if you can figure out what activity or what quality, skill, or what piece of their motivational footprint we could move forward the fastest so we get a result, the good news for you is they will really come on board this whole coaching process really, really quickly, because they will start to see results. So let's figure out where is the fastest bang for our efforts that we can get a result from. Where is it? What can we do that if we literally implement it over the next week or fortnight, we would see a dramatic shift? Let's go there, because that will build the confidence of the individual in the coaching process, and will also build your own confidence as a sales performance coach. then set a smart goal around that. And my recommendation is that don't even wait for the coaching session. Remember, you're doing this as a preparation prior to you actually running the session. You come up with where you think they're going to get the fastest bang for their efforts. You set a smart goal so that you're already prepared. Because at the very least, if they don't have an answer, you can at least then put it on the table and say, look, I've given this a lot of thought. Would you like to know what I think? And then that gives you an opportunity to share with them. Also, it would really help you to understand where they're coming from. You might want to even consider what roadblocks you think the salesperson is facing and what is stopping them from doing those activities that they should be doing anyway. What is it that's roadblocking them? And that's really the process, folks. This is the sales performance coaching process. So with that in mind, once again, I've just noticed why I'm way over time. Thank you for your time. And we look forward to speaking to you next week on the group conference coaching call. If you have any questions or you have any concerns, again, please feel free to email me, get hold of me, or speak to your coach and they can get hold of me as well. So until next time, I want you to think about what are the 1 or 2 or 3 things that you should be doing today that will secure and ensure the success of your sales team tomorrow. Thanks for your time today. Cheerio.